Strange Shadows, a Clark Ashton Smith podcast.
Swelling and towering swiftly, like a genie loosed from one of Solomon's bottles, the cloud rose on the planet's rim, a rusty and colossal column. It strode above the dead plain through a sky that was dark as the brine of desert seas that have ebbed down to desert pools. "Looks like a blithering sandstorm," commented Maspig. "It can't very well be anything else," agreed Bellman rather curtly. "Any other kind of storm is unheard of in these regions. It's the sort of hell twister that the Highs call the Zurth, and it's coming our way too. I move that we start looking for shelter. I've been caught in the Zurth before, and I don't recommend a lungful of that ferruginous dust."
Greetings, pilgrims, and welcome to Season 4, Episode 9 of Strange Shadows, the Clark Ashton Smith podcast. The voice you just heard was that of Clay Story Sculptor, reading the opening of today's story. Clay Story Sculptor is a unique YouTube channel that blends human-crafted story text to clay story sculpture, with a focus on H.P. Lovecraft, Clark Ashton Smith, and Greek myth. And of course, we'll put a link to the channel in the show notes below. I am one of your hosts, Rob Poyton.
And I'm the other one, Tim Mendes. And yes, today we're back into full-on Smith horror territory here as we go back to Mars for The Dweller in the Gulf.
Yeah, one of my favourites, this one. It's a creep factor 10, isn't it?
It's class. All of his Martian stuff, though, goes full-on survival horror. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, and I think, as we said, I think this was written about a year after Yo Vombis. It's very much in that same vein.
Yeah.
But with some interesting twists and differences. He really seemed to get into the Mars stories, didn't he?
Yeah. I mean, I got massive Macken vibes from this.
The white people, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, what Shining Pyramid, all that stuff, right? Yeah. It's like he's taken Macken's little people mythology and transplanted it to Mars. It's a great idea. It works a treat.
Absolutely. So we'll get into our favourite words in a moment. Not too many for this one. I think some of them we've had before. But shall we start with the publication history? I believe we're in for a little bit of a sit down and listen.
Yeah, you might want to buckle your seatbelts. This is going to be a rough one. So, Dweller in the Gulf was originally entitled The Eidolon of the Blind, before being switched to Dweller in the Gulf after sort of the second rejection. So first off, Smith submitted it to Weird Tales, where it was quickly rejected.
Of course.
He wrote, yeah, of course it was. He wrote to Derleth that it was too horrific for Wright's select circle of Babbitts and Pollyannas, which I thought was absolutely class. So after that, he submitted it to Harry Bates at Strange Tales, where it was similarly rejected. But finally, he submitted it to Wonder Stories, where it was accepted by David Lasser and Hugo Gernsback, Hugo the Rat. However, there's a but. They wanted a scientific explanation for the story. So Smith wrote to August Derleth on November the 15th, 1932. I'm just going to jump in now and say that I'm going to be going from two books here. I'm going to be going from Eccentric and Practical Devils, the letters of August Derleth and Clark Ashton Smith, when I'm talking about Derleth letters, and I'm going to be going from Dawnwood Spire, Lonely Hill, when talking about Lovecraft letters, both of them Hippocampus. I was wrong in thinking that the Eidolon of the Blind had been definitely accepted by Wonder. The editor wants me to give the yarn a more scientific motivation. The horror element seems to be unexceptionable. I am, however, trying it once more on Wright in the hope that it might find him in a semi-rational mood. What Weird Tales needs is a little horror. The yarns are getting tamer and more conventionalized all the time. Wandrei and Howard shared the honours, I thought, in the last issue, and I liked the tale by Starrett, though I failed to find anything very weird about it. Yes, this goes back to what we were saying about Derleth and Smith. They tended to critique weird tales a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, unfortunately, Wright didn't budge, and he wouldn't take the story. So he had to basically double down and go with Gernsback. So, writing on the 24th, Smith told Derleth, "Now I'm trying to fix up the Dweller in the Gulf, formerly the Eidolon of the Blind, for wonder stories. The alterations involve the introduction of a new character who is in a position to offer some kind of semi-scientific explanation of the phenomena in the story. I shan't change the climax to any extent, and the general atmosphere of mystery and horror is not markedly affected." Bear that in mind. Bear that in mind, dear listener.
Yes, because there's worse to come, I believe.
Oh, yes, indeed. So, The Dweller in the Gulf appeared in the March 1933 issue of Wonder Stories, and Smith was not a happy camper when it was published.
And quite justifiably so.
Well, yeah. Well, firstly, it was printed as Dweller in the Martian Depths, carrying on Gernsback's penchant for changing titles willy-nilly. He's done that a few times, like in the last few stories, hasn't he? Just randomly changing the title of the story. I mean, that'd really cheese me off as a writer.
Well, you think about your titles, don't you? You don't just pluck something out of thin air. You give some thought to a title, the same as you do to the rest of the story, you know.
Absolutely. But unfortunately, this was the least of the problems. So instead of me telling you what happened, I'll let Smith tell it in his own words. Okay. So we're going to jump to a letter dated February the 9th, 1933. My triply unfortunate tale, The Dweller in the Gulf, is printed in the current Wonder Stories under the title of Dweller in Martian Depths, and has been utterly ruined by a crude attempt on the part of someone, presumably the office boy, to rewrite the ending. Apart from this, paragraph after paragraph of imaginative description and atmosphere has been hewn bodily from the story. I have written to tell the editor what I thought of such barbarity, and I've also told him that I do not care to have my work printed at all unless it can appear verbatim or have the desired alterations made by my own hand. It shows what fine literature means to the Gernsback crew of hog butchers. I have clipped out the tale and am enclosing it with the typescript of the original ending appended, and the interpolated matter crossed out. It would be impossible, for lack of space, to write in the omissions on the margins, so I haven't tried, apart from one or two phrases, to give an idea of what they considered objectionable. But I've indicated some of the lacunae with pencil marks. However, I think I'll quote a sample from the part where the men were trying to escape from the Gulf. Looking over the verge at intervals, Bellman saw the gradual fading of the phosphorescence in the depths. Fantastic images rose in his mind. It was like the last glimmering of hellfire in some extinct inferno, like the drowning of nebulae in voids beneath the universe. He felt the giddiness of one who looks down upon infinite space, and now in italics, anon there was only blackness, and he knew by this token the awful distance they had climbed. You can send the clipping on to HPL. I'm sorry Wright couldn't see the tale. It would have certainly have been better than the interplanetary crap that he publishes.
Interplanetary crap. Lovely. Lovely.
I love it. Interplanetary crap.
Captain's log.
Oh. So we're going to turn now to Dawnwood Spire, because there's a couple of letters back to back, which also gives us a nice chance to get one of those marvelous return addresses.
Hey.
Yeah, because the first one is dated February the 10th and comes from H.P. Lovecraft. Shores of the Black Lake, Tla, time of the moonless tide.
Nice.
Dear Clark Ashton, you have my profoundest and most understanding sympathy regarding the Dweller in the Gulf, and I hope the copy I read may be a corrected one. Wonder Stories is certainly a tough case. I had thought that it was less arbitrary about its contents than outstanding and amazing, but evidently it's losing that one virtue. You are certainly right in insisting that matter be published as written or not at all. I made that proviso with weird tales at the outset. I wouldn't contribute to Strange because it couldn't guarantee integrity of text. So that's interesting to know, isn't it?
Yes, I know HBO was very averse to altering anything, wasn't he?
That's very interesting to know that
Mm,
because, yeah, it doesn't makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
yeah.
So now we get the response from Clark Ashton Smith. You can keep The Dweller in the Gulf. I've had a letter of apology from David Lasser, managing editor of Wonder Stories, saying that he made the alterations only at Gernsback's express order. Gernsback must be loco to have a story spoiled in that fashion. I judge that the idiotic revision has cooked it with readers who might have liked it otherwise. Oh, phooey.
Which was very much the case, from what I gather.
It really was, yes. It turns out that Smith was pretty much prophetic because The Dweller in the Gulf was the story that kickstarted the Boiling Point fiasco. You know, when Forrest J. Ackerman wrote in The Fantasy Fan that he could not find one redeeming feature about the story and called for the ink in Smith's pen to dry up. He even went so far as to write Smith a personal letter asking that he not submit such stories to Wonder Stories. Ackerman would later approach Smith about publishing a collection of his science fiction stories, including this tale, and would include The Dweller in the Gulf in an anthology that he published in Spain. So
It's quite strange, isn't it?
It's very strange.
Either he found out that had been edited not by Smith, or I don't know. I don't know how else to explain that.
No idea. But if you want to know more about the Boiling Point fiasco, turn to season 3, episode 10. As I did a whole mini episode on the subject, reading out back and forth, and I had great fun with that one. It was like a proto flame war, I think you could call it, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but early example, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Absolutely great stuff. So, right, to conclude, we're going to go back to the Derleth letters now for Smith to basically put the hat on it to a letter dated February the 19th. It's hard to understand the botching of The Dweller in the Gulf, except on the theory that Gernsback or one of the editors thought that the horror needed toning down. But I hadn't understood that the horror element was objectionable. The only criticism they made of the tale in its original form was that it lacked scientific motivation. I'm utterly disgusted with that outfit. Gernsback's present policy strikes me as being suicidal. Science fiction requires abundant descriptive matter to put it over at all, and most of the tales I've sent in recently have been objected to as containing a surplus of descriptive matter, adjectives, etc. Oh, hell. And the bastards owe me about $600 anyway. They might at least have the decency to print my stuff straight.
That's a fair amount, isn't it? That'd be a fair amount now to be owed, wouldn't it?
Well, it turns out Smith was wrong. Adding the 50 he was paid for this story, Gernsback actually owed him $741.
My word. And I'm guessing this is about the time that Smith needed it, because this is when his mother was taken ill, I believe, about this time.
Indeed, it was. Yeah, it was around this time. Yeah, which is why he ended up hiring a lawyer to get the money out of this. He hired New York attorney Ian Webber for collection of the debt. And Smith was actually surprised when payments started trickling in, despite Wonder Stories, the publisher, being dissolved and all the rest of it. He carried on for months and months, but eventually he did get the money. So it all ended well in the end, but yeah, it left him in pecuniary depletion when he needed the money the most, because he was dealing with a sick mother. So,
which is going to create an additional layer of stress for him, right?
Well, yeah,
which none of us need, do we? You know?
Yeah, it's absolutely baffling to me. Like, I would be incandescent if some numpty ran, like, because I mean, I've dealt with, like, all my stories get edited if they end up in anthologies, like some editor edits them, but I have to okay the edits, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And as someone who's put anthologies together, I do exactly that. You know, sometimes it bats backwards and forwards a little bit. But if a writer says to me, no, this is a fundamental part of this and I can see that, then who am I to chop that out or whatever, you know?
It's like you don't completely rewrite the ending.
No.
Change the name of the story. You may as well have called it something else and put it by written by Hugo.
Yeah. And one thing that puzzles me is this idea of putting in the scientific explanation, so-called, because we have the that text as well, which we may look at. But these guys aren't scientists. It's very clear at the start. They're prospectors. They're looking for minerals and gold and precious metals.
Yeah.
There's nothing scientific about their expedition at all.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, Gernsback had told Lasser to send Smith a letter around the time he was writing this, dated August 1932, that warned Smith that Wonder Stories was not interested in weird tales or any bizarre scientific themes. Instead, he should concentrate on originality of plot, drama, conflict, situation, environment, and character.
Which this has.
Exactly.
Character, maybe, all right, a little bit. It's a short story, but it's got all of those other things. Every box is ticked. What do you want? A story about a mission to Mars and they collect some soil samples and analyze the microbes in them and then go back to Earth? I really don't get it. Really don't get it.
No, I as somebody who's I've done quite a lot of slush reading and editing for anthologies for publishers. I've been sent things like that, and 4,000 words of the minutiae of botany,
right? Which is a piece of scientific speculation or something like that is fine.
Yeah,
but we're talking the pulps here, and to me, I always translate this to cinema. And what do you think of some of the top sci-fi films? This could be an alien movie or aliens type movie. It would make a great movie or adaptation.
Oh yeah.
I really don't understand. So it's too horrible for one, not scientific enough for the other, too weird for one, not weird enough for the other. It makes no sense to me at all. I'm struggling here.
It's baffling, isn't it? But why would you you want Clark Ashton Smith to write you stories to the point where Lasser and Gernsback have pleaded with Smith to send him stuff in the past, as we know, and they've sent him synopses and things like that and say, can you write this for us? But then say they don't want weird tales. He's a weird fiction author.
He's one of the leading weird fiction authors of his generation. He's one of the top three, right?
Insanity, isn't it? It's just absolute boggles the brain.
I often go into McDonald's and order a KFC, you know. It's totally bizarre. Yeah. Totally bizarre.
Yeah. So there you go. I actually had quite a lot of fun doing the research on that because, some of Smith's vitriol is quite amusing, isn't it? Interplanetary crap.
I know, that's great. Pollyannas and everything. Yeah.
Pollyannas and rabbits. And,
And as I say, maybe at the end we'll just come back to those little extra bits because we have one or two extracts we can read. You can see what you think. Do they add to the story? Do they detract? And so on.
Well, actually, the full lot of them are actually included in the appendices if you're going from the same books we are. So,
yes, it is in the back of the Nightshade books here, which, of course, we highly recommend. Okay, let's get into our favourite words then. As I said, not too many in this. I think everything was pretty much known, and we may have mentioned before, but there were one or two that stood out, including one in our introductory reading there, ferruginous.
Yes.
Which simply means rusted or rust-like.
Yeah, reddish brown and containing iron oxides in relation to soil. There you go.
That's our science box ticked.
Indeed. Well, no, I'm gonna do one better in a minute. Yes, my favourite is noctilucae.
Well said.
Which is a roughly spherical marine dinoflagellate, which is strongly phosphorescent.
I'm glad you clarified that.
Well, but a dinoflagellate, see, this is what happens sometimes. You look at one thing, you have to look up another. A dinoflagellate is a single-celled organism that occurs in large numbers in marine plankton and also found in fresh water. So, so basically, you see these like a glowing patch of these organisms. That's a noctilucae.
Nice. Another word that I like, fetor, F-E-T-O-R. That's always, it's just a stench or a really horrible smell, basically. I always like the sound of that word. I believe it's from the Latin, something like fetor, which means horrible smell.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to continue with that because this is a phrase, and I'm going to break down this phrase, and I'm going to show you my potential usage of this phrase. Okay.
Okay.
The phrase is mephitical effluvium. Mephitical meaning foul smelling, and effluvium meaning unpleasant or harmful odor. So, my usage, pardon my mephitical effluvium. I had roast beef for lunch.
It's the sprouts, I tell you.
It's the sprouts, I tell you.
I think we're back to the captain's log again, aren't we?
Yeah, we are, yes. A great
We've
one.
got to tick the feels box as well, of course.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
My next one is sopor, which I knew the meaning of because everyone knows soporific or soporific, but I've never seen it used in isolation like that. Sopor. Similar to stupor, again, it's from the Latin, I believe, but apparently a stupor is more severe than a sopor. Sopor is more like normal sleep.
Ah, gotcha. Yeah, next one I'm going to use it because again, it's one I want to actually put in my current lexicon is objurgations.
Oh, nice.
Which means rebuking severely, scolding, or as we would say up north, a right bollocking.
And I'm going to finish with adumbration, which I'm sure we've had before, which is a vague outline, a faint shadow, but can also mean foreshadowing as well. Adumbration.
Indeed.
So let's get into our story then. And what I like with this one, we're straight into the action. We've got this huge sandstorm on the horizon or approaching. I like the description, like a genie loosed from one of Solomon's bottles. Of course, this is the legend. I'm not sure if it's biblical or if it came after the legend about Solomon trapping either 36 or 72 jinns in brass vessels. The number varies according to the source. And he then sealed the lids with the engraving of the seal of Solomon on them. I think some of them ended up getting chucked in the sea in most of the stories, which led to all sorts of other stories to follow. I guess Aladdin being a prime example.
Absolutely. Yeah. What I like is the fact that in this opening bit, we learn that our protagonists are proper chaps. Just by that first line of dialogue from Maspic. Looks like a blithering sandstorm.
Blithering. When have you heard anyone use blithering other than in something from the 1930s or something?
Oh, up north all the time.
Oh, really? Oh, is that
Yeah.
quite common up there?
Oh, yeah. Blithering imbecile.
Ah,
You
right.
blithering numpty. Yeah, you blithering imbecile. Yeah. Blithering. Especially Yorkshire for some reason. What you blithering on about, lad? Yeah.
There you go. Yes, and we get this description from Bellman, who names this as the Zorth. That's what the Ahais call it, the locals, who, of course, we met before in Vombis. And Bellman's been caught out before. He doesn't want to get caught out again. It sounds particularly nasty. A lungful of rusty dust.
Yeah. I love the name for it, Zorth.
Zorth.
It's good, isn't it?
He does, as well as good alien descriptions, he does give pretty good names generally, doesn't he? So Alien Smith as well.
Yeah, you get some great ones in this because this is an uninhabited region called the Chore, isn't it?
Yeah. And we very much get that idea here that I think we had in Sadastor and some of the other Martian stories about the old oceans of Mars are now dried out. And that lovely description of the dark as the brine of desert seas that have ebbed down to desert pools. So very evocative. This ties in with the old canals on Mars sort of trope, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because these are a bunch of prospectors, aren't they? They're basically, it's like the gold rush.
Yeah. I was thinking like the California connection, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's it.
And even the landscape to a large extent.
Yeah, because that's what these guys, they're going, because apparently the pale platinum-like gold of Mars can be found lying in heaps like so much salt in these dried up riverbeds. So they're basically panning for gold on Mars. I love it.
Yeah. And it is that. It's always the old story. The streets are paved with gold. Or the dried rivers of Mars, they've just got lumps of gold lying around waiting to be picked up. There's always an interesting lure, isn't it, to bring people in?
Isn't it? Yeah.
However, they have been warned. We're back to our yokel knowledge again. And I have heard tales in our home regarding the reasons why former prospectors had not returned. But, these are chaps. Any danger is just part of their daily routine. And of course, there's a chance of unlimited gold. And such is the attraction of that, they would have gone down through Hinnom. Now, I had to look that up. I'm not sure if we've had this before in Smith, but the Valley of Hinnom is a ravine in Jerusalem, and it was the site of human sacrifices to Moloch. In Greek, it became known as Gehenna. So we have that association with hell, basically.
Nice. Well, I like this because obviously, if you picture the California gold rush, right, you got a bunch of prospectors in their Stetson hats kind of thing, with a 6-shooter on the hip, leading their horses through mountain passes, right? And that's essentially what you get here, but it's Smith on Mars. So we get a great creature. I love this. Their food supplies and water barrels were carried on the backs of 3 of those curious mammals called vortlops, which, with their elongated legs and necks on horny plated bodies, might seemingly have been some fabulous combination of llama and saurian. These animals, though extravagantly ugly, were tame and obedient and were well adapted to desert travel, being able to go without water for months at a time. What a creature.
Great, isn't it? I made a note here. I put down space camels.
Pretty much.
But how it's imaginative, isn't it? The description is so imaginative again.
It's like the combination of llama, so you're picturing the long neck,
yeah,
and the general shape of it, but then saurian.
I'm thinking of what was the dinosaur, the Ankylosaurus, that had like the plates on it?
That's exactly what I was thinking with the plates, the Anky. Yeah.
So far, they've found nothing but worn boulders, pebbles, and fine rusty sand. And the first thing they've seen moving is the Zorth, the first sign of animation they had discerned in that lifeless land. Obviously, they want to look for cover, and it's Chivers who spots a cave in the old riverbank. So, quite naturally, I suppose, they decide to move into the cave to take cover from the storm. Seems harmless enough, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I like we get this sort of bit of geology and history here. This sort of relates into the time element because we get depth as well in this, but we get that sense of time because the cave is probably an old dried out river course. It's in the dried out riverbed. So again, this sense of something else was here eons ago, and now this is a totally dead landscape.
Yeah, because they're like, okay, well, the storm's going to last for about an hour or so, so let's have a look around. Might be interesting. It's kind of logical thing to do, right? To kill some time.
There it is again, right? No digging here, warning to the curious. You've heard the rumours and the stories.
Exactly.
You could just sit in the mouth of the cave and sit the storm out, but no.
We get a great description, like you're saying, but Smith again with his atmosphere, right? The place was bare with the death-like emptiness of some long-deserted catacomb. Its rusted floor and walls returned no gleam or sparkle to the playing lights. It sloped downward at an easy gradient, and the sides were watermarked at a height of 6 or 7 feet. So, yeah, oppressive. If anybody's been in a cave, you'll know that feeling.
Again, very evocative, yeah. And I love this. The darkness, heavy as with a weaving of black webs, clogged the interior. So that adds in almost like a tactile sense as well, doesn't it? You walk in the dark and you brush against a cobweb kind of feeling.
Yeah, but people always talk about that, the darkness hung heavy in the air. You always get that sense, don't you? That oppressive sense that darkness is heavier than the light.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think it's that sort of play on that.
So they leave the vortlops at the entrance because they're immune to this. They're armor plated. And I like they turn their torches on. And I like a little bit later on, one of them pulls the revolver out, right? A revolver.
Oh, no. But I was going to get into this because this is like, for me, is one of the most chap things I have ever heard in my life. Because you got Maspic sniffing the air and asking, do you suppose we'll encounter any kind of life? So Bellman replies, not likely. Even the wild vortlops avoid the char. But there's certainly a touch of dampness in the air, persisted Maspic. That means water somewhere. And if there's water, there may be life also. perhaps of a dangerous kind. And here it comes. Here it comes. We've got our revolvers, says Bellman.
That's so good. But then, as if that's not enough, he follows that up with, "But I doubt if we'll need them as long as we don't meet any rival gold hunters from the earth," he added cynically. That's so Smith, isn't it?
It is.
That cynicism there. Yeah. The biggest danger is humans. Actually, it turns out it isn't, but
No.
we'll get to that. And with that building of the atmosphere, we next get the auditory sense. All three had paused. Somewhere in the gloom ahead, they heard a prolonged equivocal noise that baffled the ear with incongruous elements. It was a sharp rustling and rattling, as of metal dragged over rock, and also it was somehow like the smacking of myriad wet, enormous mouths. Anon it receded and died out at a level that was seemingly far below. And Chivers asks, is this one of those millipede monster things that the Martians talk about? At that point, I'm out. I'm out in the sandstorm. That's
you'd
it.
be gone.
Giant millipedes. I'm out.
I'd be there going, "Hey, pretty." Yeah, I love Bellman's approach here. You've been hearing too many native fairy tales.
And there it is again, right? The dismissal of the knowledge. We're chaps. We know better. Local superstition, etc., etc. So basically, they go deeper into the cave. They do get that sense of stagnant ancient waters, but there's another smell as well. My sort of wild beast or animal type odor. And this is where they find the precipice, where the olden channel ended sheerly and the shelves and walls pitched away on each side into incalculable space. Again, just touching on that cosmic element, this one is very much about the depths. When they go down into the depths, it almost seems like days or weeks they're traveling. That idea of unfathomable space.
Yeah, what I liked here is sort of allusions to the abyss, because it carries on there. Going to the very edge, he dipped his pencil of light adown the abyss, disclosing only the vertical cliff. It's that sense of gazing into the abyss.
Yes.
And is it the abyss that's gazing back into you, or something that lives in the abyss?
Yes, and the word gazing might take on a peculiar ironic meaning as well.
Yes, of course.
Now, fortunately for them, or not fortunately, there's a kind of slope leading down. They find this sort of pathway. I almost imagine it like a sort of spiral pathway that winds around the outside of the cavern and just goes down, down, and down. And it's 2 yards wide, and its gentle inclination, its remarkable evenness and regularity conveyed the idea of an ancient road hewn in the face of the cliff. "There's our road to Hades," said Bellman. Well, isn't he correct? There's your foreshadowing. Oh, there's a little bit of goading here as well. Bellman says, well, yeah, maybe it's Hades, but I'm going to go down and have a look just to get an idea of the size of the place. You and Chivers can wait here if you're afraid.
Yeah.
Talk about peer pressure.
Yeah, because poor Maspic's like, what's the use of going further? I, for one, have had enough of darkness already. He's the sensible one in the party, right? He's the one who's like, no, lads. Let's just go back up there and hang out with the weird lizardy llama things.
So they begin the descent, and I have to say the film The Descent did spring to mind during some of this as well. One of the most effective horror films, I think. Excellent film. There is something about that descent into darkness. On one hand, it's not an alien landscape. You're in a cave. I mean, it's rock, it's stone, there might be a bit of water. But I think it's that idea of descent into darkness, into the unknown. And then, of course, we get that sound return as well. That rustling, scraping, the soft, methodical myriad smacking, vaguely similar to the noise made by some enormous creature that withdraws its feet from a quagmire. So it's difficult to determine what that sound is as well. What is making that sound? But it does grow fainter, and at length it ceases. And again, that feeling that perhaps the maker of the sound has gone down. So you're going to follow it, right?
Yeah. Well, listen, now it's Chivers, isn't it? Should we go back now, please? But Bellman's like, nah. But he does, doesn't he? He's like, No, we may as well take eternity to explore the place. But you can tell his reluctance. He's definitely the recklessly inquisitive type.
Yes. And as we say at the start, there's nothing scientific about this.
No.
They're not speculating that this was formed. You get that idea in the narrative, but none of them are saying, "Oh, I bet this was formed by an old watercourse, or perhaps this was made by an old civilization." No, let's just have a look, see what's down there. Could be some gold.
I mean, this sort of descent also did bring to mind Lovecraft's The Mound, because I'm pretty sure in that, don't they go round like a circular spiral thing down into Kinyan? Or is it Nakai? I can never remember which one it is. It's either Kinyan or Nakai. I can't remember which one's blue, which one's red.
When they get down to the bottom as well, it put me in mind of the festival with the subterranean lake and the phosphorescence and all the rest of it.
Of course.
That kind of feeling. This is where we get our first jump scare, right?
Yeah.
And again, this is why, we said about Smith and his cinematic writing. This is the great bit in the adaptation where he's shining the torchlight around, and suddenly you see these pale figures in its glow. And I almost imagine them, they don't really have eyes, so I don't suppose the light would affect them, but I almost imagine them putting a hand up against the light,
Almost Morlock-like, isn't it?
Of course, yes. No one wants to get caught by the Morlocks.
No.
Let's make the eyes water. Maspic was a little ahead of the others now. They had covered at least half of the distance to the old cavern channel when his torch, playing for 20 feet ahead on the path, illumined an array of whitish figures, 3 abreast, that blocked the way. The flashlights of Bellman and Chivers, coming close behind, brought out with hideous clearness the vanward limbs and faces of the throng, but could not determine its number. The creatures were generically similar to the Ahais or Martian natives. They seemed, however, to represent an extremely degraded and aberrant type, and the fungus-like pallor of their bodies denoted many ages of underground life. They possessed the enormous open nostrils, the flaring ears, the barrel chests and lanky limbs of the Martians, but all of them were eyeless.
Mm.
And it's not just that they're eyeless, they have deep and empty orbits that suggested a removal of the eyeballs. So I like the way he layers on the creepiness gradually here. It is steadily growing.
Oh, yeah. And these creatures obviously owe a debt to Arthur Machen, like quite obviously.
Yes.
Because this is Machen's little people.
Mm.
Then they sort of had this almost serpent-like slit eyes and all this kind of thing, and they were pale and small. And when you get to the manner of speech, because they have the high-pitched nasal speech that's nothing like normal humanity, it's very much like that. In fact, this whole thing very much reminds me of the novel of the Black Seal and the Shining Pyramid.
Totally. And this is where we get the Chappiest Chap of the Year award part 2 with Bellman. Because what does he do? What does any chap do in a situation where he's confronted by locals? He steps forwards and speaks very loudly at them, probably gesturing with his walking stick. Stepping boldly forward ahead of Maspic, he addressed the creatures in the guttural high tongue, many of whose vocables are scarcely to be articulated by an earthman. Some of the people stirred uneasily and emitted shrill cheeping sounds that bore little likeness to the Martian language. It was plain that they could not understand Bellman. Sign language, by reason of their blindness, would have been equally useless. Bellman continues along the chap theme by drawing his revolver. That's absolute tweed, that isn't it? That's an absolute tweed moment.
Yeah, absolute tweed. Yeah, telling his mates to do the same. We've got to get through them somehow, he said, and if they won't let us pass without interference, the click of a cocked hammer served to finish the sentence. And what happens next?
Yeah. I'm in two minds about this because so far these things haven't shown any hostility.
No.
They obviously live here. So you go down, you shine a light on them, you shout at them, and then you're going to shoot them. It is very chap, isn't it?
Oh, very much. Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying they're, as it turns out, perhaps unjustified in that, because as it turns out, these things do have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But, perhaps you could have just backed up a bit, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, so they start shooting. The creatures surge at them. And in short, they're captured pretty quickly. Revolvers are knocked out of hands. He talks about scores of them at one point, doesn't he? There's like a vast throng of these things.
Yeah.
So the humans are very quickly overwhelmed.
Yeah, 'cause they're basically circling like the rim of this abyss, aren't they? They're all around the drop-off point, as he calls it. And you can, it's that brilliant visual. You can just imagine the little heads poking over the top. Look, it's a great visual. Almost like Jawas in the first Star Wars, you know, when they're going down that canyon and you got them like peeking over rocks and stuff.
Tightly caught in a moving vice of bodies, they were borne resistlessly along. Handicapped by the fear of dropping their torches, they could do nothing against the nightmare torrent, rushing with dreadful strides on a path that led even deeper into the abyss. Unable to see only the lit backs and members of the creatures before them, they became a part of that eyeless and cryptic army. That's a great line, isn't it? Eyeless and cryptic army.
Mm.
And I suppose this is where we get one of Smith's journeys again, right? From one place to another. We talked about, you know, going through the telescope.
Oh, yeah, of course.
This is a similar sort of thing, but they're being carried down into another place. And it is one of those timeless, almost dreamlike journeys. They've got no real sense of time or distance or anything else. It's a waking nightmare.
Yeah, you got a lovely sentence here. Thought, volition, even terror were numbed by the unearthly rhythm of those abyssward beating feet. I could write a song around that sentence. It's one of those. It's so lyrical. It's great. It's yeah.
So eventually they stop. The creatures release them. Bellman shines his flashlight around. The throng of Martians have kind of spread out around them, and they're now in a huge cavern at the bottom of the Gulf circling road. And this is where we get that bit that reminded me of the festival. Far below in the blackness, a phosphorescent glimmer played to and fro like noctilucae on an underworld ocean. A slow fetid wind blew upon him, and he heard the weird sighing of waters about the sunken cliffs. Waters that had ebbed through untold cycles during the planet's desiccation. And the feeling you get is that this is some kind of temple or something, perhaps, because we have columns and bas reliefs and all the rest of it. This isn't just a natural space.
Yeah, we're in proper Lovecraft territory in terms of the location, aren't we? Despite it being on Mars. If this had been in the desert somewhere or out in the Oklahoma or somewhere like that, it would be very much Lovecraft, the way it's described.
Yes, yes. This is Smith's ability to bring horror into the science fiction because generally, I think a lot of science fiction of this era, what was that heroic cowboys in space kind of stuff?
No, it was. Yeah, it was cowboys in space.
You had that sort of action or chaps in space, yeah. But it's always that nice blending with Smith, I think, of genres.
Yeah, because I think it's like he almost single-handedly created the survival horror sci-fi genre. Because I mean, this is like what you ended up with down the line with things like Dead Space and Alien and all this kind of stuff, right? I mean, you could link it all back to this kind of story.
Totally. And now we see more of the structure of this place because they get sort of pushed forward deeper into this chamber. Between the thick and seemingly topless pillars, the floor ascended in an altar of 7 oblique and pyramidal tiers. On the top, there squatted an image of pale metal, a thing no larger than a hair, but monstrous beyond all imagining. The Martians crowded about the Earthmen. One of them took Bellman by the arm as if urging him to climb the altar. With the slow steps of a dreamer, he mounted the sloping tiers, and Chivers and Maspic followed. The image resembled nothing they had seen on the Red Planet or elsewhere. It was carven of whitish gold, and it represented a humped animal with a smooth and overhanging carapace, from beneath which its head and members issued in tortoise fashion. The head was venomously flat, triangular, and eyeless. From the drooping corners of the cruelly slitted mouth, 2 long proboscides curved upward, hollow and cup-like at the end. So it's quite a small idol, but again, this is one of Smith's aliens. It's a bit tortoise-like, but not really a tortoise, is it? There's all these other little additions to it that takes it beyond anything they've seen before.
Yeah, because it apparently has a curious double tail that coiled and braided beneath its crouching body as well. So he likes his chimera-like creations, doesn't he? So you've got element of the saurian, the reptilian, all these different bits. But the thing, knowing what I know about the end of this story, one bit of that description makes me shudder. It's about the two long proboscides curved upwards, hollow, and cup-like at the end. Just remember that, listener. Remember that.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of alluded to this once already, right? With that description of the creature. So there's that adumbration or foreshadowing again,
Mm,
but it's just laid in very subtly, very gently.
yeah.
The other thing I got from this was this idol or eidolon. It seems to exude almost a hypnotic effect.
Yes.
The creatures get involved in what is obviously a sort of ritual for them, but the humans feel this as well.
Yeah. I'm going to have to read this line. As if in some fantastic ritual of touch, these creatures were fondling the eidolon with their lank fingers, tracing its loathsome outlines. I had to read it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it's almost like they're stroking this thing, and it gives them what is called a narcotic ecstasy. And Bellman, Chivers, and Maspic follow their example.
Mm.
The thing was cold to the touch and clammy, as if it had lain recently in a bed of slime, but it seemed to live, to throb, and swell under their fingertips, I say. And basically, Chivers and Maspic fall into a sopor rather than a stupor. Bellman is obviously the alpha chap here, because even though he goes into a bit of a dreamlike state, he manages to resist. He manages to stay awake. And this is where we get one of those, it's exposition in that kind of dream form almost that we've mentioned before, and Robert E. Howard used a lot. So it's like you start to get something of the background and the history of what's going on through these dreams or visions.
Yeah. Well, I guess that all comes from a lot of the native things of the dream walking and all that kind of stuff. But and the use and obviously like going back to druids and stuff, the use of mushrooms to bring enlightenment.
Yeah, your peyote rituals and all that.
Exactly.
The connection with the ancestors and all that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet he was something else, an entity without name that ruled over the blind and was worshipped by them, a thing that dwelt in the ancient putrescent waters in the nether deep and came forth at intervals to raven unspeakably. In that duality of being, he sated himself at blind feasts and was also devoured. With all this, like a third element of identity, the eidolon was associated, but only in a tactile sense, and not as an optic memory. That's really creepy.
Isn't it?
Most of us, when we dream, it's primarily visual, isn't it?
Of course, yeah.
There's no light here. There's no sight. They wouldn't even understand what sight was. So everything is experienced through touch, tactile sense. Very interesting concept.
Yeah, very.
However, he does succumb eventually and falls into a dreamless slumber and suddenly awakes. And we get another jump scare. What is it? First thing he sees is a half-eaten body.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of shocking, isn't it? How it just appears.
And presumably, again, that's in the torchlight, right? So you imagine he sort of stirs himself, sits up, shines his torch around, half-eaten body of one of the troglodytes, as he calls them.
It's that classic horror film thing almost, isn't it? Where the protagonist goes into a darkened chamber and falls over. The torch flies across the room. They scrabble around. They find the torch. They roll over, and there's a dead body right next to them. It's that.
Yeah.
But it's quite a grim a dead body, isn't it? Because it says here that some of the members were missing and the remainder were gnawed, even to the curiously articulated bones.
Yeah, and Smith is never really sort of backwards in describing the gore, is he? For the time. Well, I suppose compared to Howard.
Yeah.
But nothing is really hidden, is it?
No. Well, Return of the Sorcerer is a great example, isn't it? Because that's the one that he had to tone down because they were like, no, you're not getting away with that.
So he manages to rouse his companions And this is where that noise returns. That slithering, sucking sound is somewhere among the massy pillars beyond the sleeping bodies. A smell as of rotten water tinged the air, and he saw that there were many curious rings of wetness on the stone, such as might be made by the rims of inverted cups. So it's fairly obvious to us now what's happening. We've seen the image and the idol. Now we're getting the real thing.
So Bellman panics, doesn't he? And again, we get chap central here because obviously Maspic and Chivers are still out for the count. So he basically shakes them roughly to lay over their eyes and go, "Get up, damn you!"
Yes, with many objurgations and oaths and much muscular effort.
Yes, there you go.
So now they've got to find their way back to the road up. They're wandering among these repugnantly carved columns for what seemed like an enormous distance. They come at last to the sheer verge, that portico of the black Tartarus from which they could look down on its ultimate gulf. They've still got that phosphorescence below, but turning away from that, they see at the cave's corner the beginning of the upward road. So they've got a way out. And this is where they think now, because all three of them have got flashlights on, perhaps we better turn two off, because we only need one to get out and save the batteries. I don't know, they're using ever ready or whatever in these flashlights, I presume.
Duracell.
You don't want those cheap ones, do you, from the pound shop?
the Panasonics.
Banging the torch. Shit.
Yeah, cheap pound shop batteries that last about like 20 minutes. Yeah.
It's the flickering that's worse, I think. They begin their escape. It all seems to be going okay, doesn't it? They're going upwards. They've got the sound behind them. They can see the phosphorescence below, but it's almost like there's a sort of light at the end of the tunnel. They think they can't physically see anything yet, but that's the feeling. Upwards, there's hope.
But that's like one of those great things in horror, isn't it? I mean, but I think that's something I've struggled with. But you find in a lot of modern horror, it's very hopeless. It's almost from the start, you know they're doomed.
Yeah.
So what's the point in caring? You've got to have that dangling carrot of hope that they might escape to get you to care. And I think a lot of modern film especially seems to miss that point.
I think that's very true. Yeah, that's a good observation, I think. And I'd add to that, it's not just in terms of that, but thinking back to the Frankenstein we watched recently, the Del Toro.
Oh, yeah.
I think one of the things that turned us off of that was that Victor was such an arsehole. There's nothing redeeming. So you have absolutely zero sympathy. You don't see him start as one thing and turn into something else, or it just seems arsehole from the start. I don't care. Oh, look, he got killed. So what?
Yeah.
You know?
That's the point.
I think it's that same idea. Everything is presented as absolutes right from the very start.
Yeah.
It's not subtle, is it?
I think that, like the villains, especially, that is another good observation, because nowadays they are so irredeemable. I mean, but the best villains are always ones that you can understand their motive.
Yeah.
You know, they're always the best villains that you can, you know, okay, he's gone to the extreme, but you know why. Whereas if he's just an unredeemable arsehole, it's just like, again, like you say, you just check out, don't you? It's just like, oh, well, just kill him, get it over with.
Yeah, shoot him, bang, whatever. Yeah. But also then, when you have that good writing of a villain like that, you understand their motives. You might even start to sympathize with the motives.
Indeed.
Because, yeah, all I'm doing is getting rid of the bad people.
Exactly.
You know, all I'm doing is saving humanity by doing this. Yeah, if I bring our Lord Cthulhu back, it's going to help everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is it. And that's where good drama lies, isn't it? In having that kind of, you know, that feeling of, oh, I shouldn't be agreeing with him, but he's kind of right.
Sort of got a point. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's like the Jigsaw from the Saw movies, right? Is a good example, because his whole thing is punishing people that have been really bad.
Right. Yeah.
Because the whole concept of that was he's got cancer. So he's like, well, why me? And why do these arseholes get to live? Well, they'll have to prove that they're worthy of living, hence the tests. That's in a nutshell, is the gist of it. Whether the movies are good or bad, which most of them are bad, That's not the point, but it's a good premise.
Well, it sends up an interesting dynamic, doesn't it, from the start? Rather,
Yeah.
yeah. So yes, there is hope. The minor urges of hunger, thirst, and fatigue have been trod under by the fear that impelled him. From Maspic and Chivers, very slowly, the clogging stupor lifted, and they too were conscious of an adumbration of terror vast as the night itself. The blows and kicks and objurgations of Bellman were no longer needed to drive them on. So they've got motivation, right? And they're doing it. They're going for it. Oh, there's one other thing I wanted to mention here. Evil, ancient, soporous, the night hung about them. It was like the thick and fetid fur of bats. That's brilliant,
isn't it?
And the thing that instantly popped into mind for that was that footage of the bats that someone had turned upside down. And they said, this is Dancing at the Goth Club.
So they're in a goth club.
I'm going to put a link into that. It's one of my favourite video clips.
Yeah, I think, isn't it Bauhaus, the clip? I think it is.
I think it is.
I'm pretty sure it's Bauhaus. Yeah.
Goth bats. However, that sound returns. The sound of something that slithered over stone far down in the abyss. The sucking noise of a creature that withdrew its feet as if from a quagmire. So you get the impression here, they're going round the spiral bit. This thing is going straight up. It's just climbing up the bare rock. So it's going to catch them, right?
We often talk about potential film adaptations. What I want is the HPLS guys to do a dark adventure radio theatre on this, because the sound design would be tremendous.
That would be excellent. That would
Lots of reverb and then the sucking noise. Oh my God, that'd be such a good audio drama.
Yes, this is tailor-made for audio drama, isn't it, really? Because it's three blokes and a torch.
Isn't it? Oh yeah, because it's all in the dark and blind. And yeah, and then obviously Caverns just gives you so much scope to play with sound and distance and all that.
And now the true horror reveals itself, because on hearing that, they do finally fail their sand rolls. And they're just frantic now. They just started running. Even Bellman, losing his last remnant of control, followed suit. It was a race with unknown horror. They can still hear that sound, appallingly close and a little ahead. Oh, shit. And this is where we get our... I don't know if it's the final jump scare, but certainly another one. Because now those torches, you can imagine they're running. The beams are kind of waving all over the place. And now they hit something on the path in front of them. Here plainly was the creature that had served as a model for that atrocious image. The humped enormous carapace, vaguely recalling the armour of the Glyptodon, shone with a lustre as of wet white gold. The eyeless head, alert but somnolent, was thrust forward on a neck that arched obscenely. A dozen or more of short legs with goblet-shapen feet slantwise beneath the overhanging shell. The two proboscides, yard long with cupped ends, arose from the corners of the cruelly slitted mouth and waved slowly in air toward the Earthmen.
Ooh.
And this thing is big, right? It fills the whole path. It's like at least 6 foot wide, you know.
And this is where Smith goes into full HPL territory with this next piece here. The thing, it seemed, was old as that dying planet, an unknown form of primal life that dwelt always in the caverned waters. So there we go.
There's your time again, and
yeah, this cosmic horror lurking in the depths for all eternity. You know, great stuff.
And it finally plays out, and again the horror just increases. I like these stories where you think, oh, that's horrible. Oh, that's even more horrible. And every page you turn, the horror is built up until this. Inconceivably swift and sure in all its motions, with short strides on its hindmost legs, levered by the towel, the monster came forward on the helpless men. Unerringly, the two proboscides curved over, and their ends came down on Chivers' eyes as he stood with lifted face. They rested there, covering the entire sockets for a moment only. Then there was an agonizing scream as the hollow tips were withdrawn with a sweeping movement, lithe and vigorous as the lashings of serpents. So, two bad things about that. One, it takes Chivers' eyes. The second bad thing is the other two see that and know what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Chivers swayed slowly, nodding his head and twisting about in half narcotized pain. Maspic, standing at his side, saw in a dull and dreamlike manner the gaping orbits from which the eyes were gone. It was the last thing that he ever saw. At that instant, the monster turned from Chivers, and the terrible cups, dripping with blood and fetor, descended on Maspic's own eyes.
Grim. It's really good.
Isn't
It's
it?
one of Smith's grimmer endings. So basically, they're all caught, and it ends with blood rinning heavily upon their faces, with the somnolent, vigilant, implacable and eyeless shape at their heels, herding them on, restraining them when they tottered at the brink. The three began their second descent of the road that went down forever to a night-bound Avernus. Woof.
What a story. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it's I think, as you say, that's real sci-fi survival horror, and why any editor of a weird fiction type magazine would turn that down or feel that it needed changing to the extent that it was. I know I've said it before, but it's just baffling.
It boggles the mind, doesn't it? It really does boggle the mind. Why you would take the shears to that ending, I have no idea. Unless, like Smith's hypothesized that it was like, oh, well, it's too grim. So why accept it in the first place if it,
Yeah, in which case, yeah, I mean, because as editors, you get that, you might get a story, you think, well, this would have to be edited so much, I'm not going to accept it.
Well, I've done it when I've been editing things. I'm like, yeah, okay, can you rejig the ending some way? Usually if it's something like a themed anthology, like what we did with the Norse thing and Doggerland and stuff like that, there were times in that it's like, look, can you rejig the ending to include this? And maybe that, if you can make it work, but certainly it needs to have this in
Yeah,
it.
so it fits in with the rest
So
of the
it fits the theme.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it ties into something else.
Yeah.
And somewhere else can you mention this? Somewhere else can you maybe get rid of that because it doesn't really fit with the overall thing.
The Pickman Papers was a prime example of that, because every contributor was told the setting is you're in the Pickman Gentlemen's Club in 18, whatever it was. Your character sits down in front of the fire and says, here's my story. So it's a very clear setup. And of course, the anthology is bookended with them coming in and then the end of the evening sort of stuff. So, yeah. And as a writer, I sometimes appreciate that because it gives me a very clear guideline.
Yeah.
And sometimes that helps me set my story up because I don't have to think about that bit. This is where we are, right?
I was going to say that with that Pickman thing, that was great. Like, because whereas at the start of a story, you're setting scenes. I didn't need to do that. I just had chap sits back in his wingback chair, takes a mouthful of brandy, lights his pipe, and begins.
So it was in 1835 that I met Chartman.
Exactly it. That's exactly what I did. I was just like, well, that's great. It just basically jump starts the story because I could just get straight into it.
There we go. Yeah. So here's what happened in that edit. And for this, I'm referring to the Steve Behrens book, Clark Ashton Smith, A Critical Guide to the Man and His Work. So they're captured, as in the original story, but they are brought to a blinded Earthman, John Chalmers, who tells them that you're his worship a strange creature that lives in the lake. He shows them a metallic sculpture of the thing, which when rubbed induces a drug-like state of delirium. The Earthmen participate in a religious ceremony, and Chalmers instructs them to touch the image. Do as I am doing, and you won't mind the darkness so much. You don't miss your eyes or need them here. You'll drink the putrid water of the lake. You'll eat the raw slugs, the raw blind fish and lake worms, and find them good, and you won't know if the dweller comes and gets you. So they all fall unconscious, as in the original story. The dweller comes up. It's actually the half-eaten body of Chalmers that Bellman sees when he gets up. Still, they try and escape, but the dweller is waiting for them. Each man in turn has his eyes plucked out and all are led back into the depths. However, one of the things that was changed, as we said at the end in there, was one character escapes after witnessing the fate of his companions. So, that's quite a big change as well. I can kind of see, I mean, the description of your life as a blind thing in this underground place, living on lake worms and raw slugs. That's quite nasty. But I don't see anything scientific in that at all.
Well, I think it may be talking about like earlier on, you get a bit more, he gives a bit more backstory. So I'm just going to go from Appendix 4 in the Nightshade book here. I'm just going to read a paragraph. My God, who are you? Cried Bellman, shocked into full wakefulness. For a few moments, the man gibbered unintelligibly, as if he'd forgotten the words of human speech, or could no longer articulate them. Then he croaked feebly, with many pauses and incoherent breaks. You are Earthmen! They told me you'd been captured, even as they captured me. I was an archaeologist once. My name was Chalmers, John Chalmers. It was years ago. I don't know how many years. I came into the Chore to study some of the old ruins. They got me, these creatures of the pit. I have been here ever since. There is no escape. The Dweller takes care of that. They are a degenerate remnant of the Uris, the old Martian race that flourished before the Ahais. Everyone believes them to be extinct. The ruins of some of their cities are still extant in the Chore, as far as I can learn. I'm able to speak their language now. This tribe was driven underground by the dehydration of the Chore, and they followed the ebbing waters of a sub-Martian lake that lies at the bottom of this gulf. They are little more than animals now, and they worship a weird monster that lives in the lake, the Dweller, the thing that walks on the cliff. So there we go. He just gives it a bit more backstory.
Yeah. Which I don't know that it particularly needs, because you
kind of infer that.
Kind of infer a lot of that. Yeah, it feels a bit extraneous, to be honest.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's all kind of unnecessary. But if it was enough to get it past them and published, then Smith probably thought, well, it's not changing the story in any massive way, then so be it. But then they came along with the shears and rewrote it anyway.
And the ending in particular, I mean, that changes it. But one of them escaped. It takes away that grimness, which is one of the characteristics of Smith stories generally, I think.
Yeah, it all just seems so unnecessary. Like the changing of the name as well, from the dwelling of in the Gulf to the dweller in the Martian depths. Why?
To the dweller, the dweller in the Martian depths, Mars being the planet just after Earth in orbit from the sun.
Yeah,
it's like one of those old Blackadder book titles, isn't it?
Oh, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Being the singular adventures of 3 prospectors on Mars.
Well, it's funny because when I was looking up objurgations earlier, I actually thought of the dictionary episode. It was precipitous of me to your contrafibularities.
Contrafibularities, yeah. Marvellous.
Sausage.
I think Smith would have enjoyed that episode.
Absolutely.
So there we are. For me, that's, again, top-notch Smith, and the Mars stories always really hit home for me. It's that
brilliant stuff.
Blending of science fiction and horror. An alien landscape that isn't necessarily always that alien. I mean, if you lived in California, that's not such an alien landscape, really.
I suppose not, no.
But it allows him to introduce those things like the space camels and the ahais and all the rest of it. It just adds that fantastic element in, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So, as always, please do let us know, dear listener, what you think. You can, of course, drop us a line on Patreon, on the YouTube channel. And don't forget, of course, that the Innsmouth forum is now up and running. It would be great to see you on there. In fact, I'm going to refer to that first, because we have got some messages in over the last few weeks. And the first one I want to pull out of the bag, so to speak, is from the Innsmouth forum. And I asked the question on there, having read the poem Revenant, does anyone have a clue what clapsemiae are? Because I couldn't find a thing about this. So this is from one of Smith's poems, and good old Neil's our Auburn correspondent responded, an hourglass. Apparently it's the proper name for an hourglass, and he sent me a link explaining. Now, the link, I think what Smith wrote in the poem, clapsemiae, must be the plural, because it's got an E on the end. With the E on the end, there wasn't anything. As soon as you take that E off, then you find definitions. That's really strange, isn't it? Normally, if you misspell a word a bit, it will come up anyway.
Yeah, I've actually found that with some Smithisms. I had one a while ago that was only when I put the singular in that I could find anything about it.
I'll have to remember that in the future then. Yeah, always go for the singular. Yeah, so thanks for that, Niels. Thank you very much. And while we're speaking about Niels, just a quick reminder, of course, January the 10th, the Smith Circle Conference in Auburn. It's got an excellent roster of guests. There's exhibitions, Smith artwork, all sorts of things going on. Of course, we'll put the link in the show notes below.
Yeah, our next one comes from Patreon and is discussing our bonus episode that we did recently, specifically my bit about love and marriage, wasn't it? Rumpy pumpy. This comes from A.T. Johnson. I recall reading somewhere that Smith's novel was to be The Scarlet Succubus, A Tale of Zothique. Oh, I wish they'd written of that. Maybe in an old Carter BAF intro somewhere. P.S. Nice Pot Will Eat Itself reference, Tim. I'm glad somebody got it. And I'm just going to say, rough justice, rough law. Because I was talking about the song Get the Girl, Kill the Baddies, right, which is one of my favourites. Yeah.
And yeah, The Scarlet Succubus, that's a great sounding title, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yeah, we should have to do a bit more research on that. We'll see if we can find that reference. Thanks for that, AT. And on the same episode, Steve Grant wrote on Facebook, that was an excellent episode. I laughed a few times and my cats gave me a suspicious look. Positively Arthurian.
Hey, nice.
Yeah, my cats often give me, I describe them as very judgmental looks.
Judgmental.
Quite withering sometimes, yeah.
Cats do the look of judgment. I always think a cat is saying, you're such a pillock, you know, when they're looking at you.
Oh, really?
It's
really?
That slow blink of like, really?
By the way, my bowl's empty, you know, just saying.
Yeah. Right, so we're skipping over to our episode about the dimension of chance now. So Tobias Nielsen replied on Facebook, I'm picturing an Accept cover band called London Leatheroids now. Oh, brilliant. So, in case you're unfamiliar, Accept has a song called London Leather Boys, and I honestly don't know how much better that is. Now, Accept are a German heavy metal band who formed in the late 60s, early 70s, and they are basically, think of the cheesiest cheesy cheese you could think of.
Wow.
And that's what you're getting from Accept. Now, just indulge me for 1 second. I believe it goes something like this. London Leather Boys, nightmares, pleasure, what you've done. London Leather Boys, all together. There we go. They are, ultimately, like the 80s stuff. Now, you see, one of my favorite things on Facebook is a group called Crap 80s Metal Art.
Crap 80s. I'm making a note of this as we.
It's hilarious. It's just rubbish album covers, basically. It's just people posting rubbish album covers. And the album that song is on comes from one that gets posted a lot. The album is called Balls to the Wall, and I'm just going to leave it there. It's a man in leather trunks squeezing a tension ball.
Oh dear.
So there you go.
My eyes, please take my eyes. I shall see if I can dig out a link to that.
There you go. Absolutely awful stuff.
Thank you, Tobias. Thank you for that. And finally, on YouTube, our reader for today, Clay Story Sculptor, writes, an intimately engaging read, perhaps once to taste and a second to savour an enjoyable narration. Fun, pulpy chase, and tech and chaotic physics, though the text was rather long and similar in narrative to some of Smith's other pulp sci-fi outings. A little drawn out, however, there are probably stipulated requirements from the editor as to why this is, and the action, while Smith's subtle wit and lovely descriptions help not only in reading it, but in writing it in the first place for the paycheck, which we do not begrudge the magician. Interesting that despite the fantastic situation and wherever it led them, the main characters are still at each other's throats, and the tone had sense of movies like Eagle's Wing, Seraphim Falls, Farscape, with a dose of Morlock and Elu, and a snifter of the final countdown, plus topsy-turvy dimensional goings-on. 6 out of 10. Thanks for the podcast, Tim and Rob, and for the reading, Shelley. Keep it up. Thank you, sir. Yes, agree with all of that.
Yeah, because I believe we we did actually find out that a lot of it was dictated by the editorial team. They basically gave him an outline, didn't they, for that one? So yeah, good observations.
Yeah, Smith himself acknowledged that, didn't it? This is basically, it pays the rent next month kind of thing.
Pays the bills. Yeah.
But as we always say, even Smith, when he's in sort of low gear, still beats most other writers anyway. Always a joy to read.
Very true.
Yeah. All right, that's our mail over the last few weeks. As we said, please do feel free to send in any questions, corrections, ideas. A big thanks, as always, to our patrons for signing up. If you'd like to join them, do check out our Patreon page, where you'll get free access to bonus content for Strange Shadows and the Innsmouth Book Club. You'll also get free entry for any events we put on. And we'd also like to extend an invitation to any patrons who'd like to come and join us on Strange Shadows. Join us for a chat over one of the stories. Do get in touch and let us know. Okay, that's it for this episode. What are we looking at next time, sir?
Next time, we're going to Zickarth for The Maze of the Enchanter, which is an absolutely brilliant story. It's one of them ones I had in one of them Panther paperbacks.
Yeah, me too. And I think I read it under the title The Maze of Maldweeb. But we'll get into all that, no doubt, with the publication history.
That's it.
Excellent. Looking forward to that. Thanks again for joining us today, folks. It's goodbye from me, Rob Poynton.
And it's goodbye from me, Tim Mendes.